So yeah, as Helen had mentioned, today's session is Power Automate Essentials. So it's more of a sort of an introductory view into Power Automate. Um, so let's just move through our slides. So for anybody who's not used Power Automate before and has come along because you've heard about it and you're wondering what it does. So Power Automate is all about automating workflows, so daily tasks. It integrates fully with the whole Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So Teams, SharePoint, all of the Office applications, Power Automate will integrate and can automate processes within those. Today, we're going to be concentrating on cloud-based flows, so working in the cloud with 365, so SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive. There is also a desktop version of Power Automate, which you can use to automate desktop processes. So the types of flows that you can create. So there's an automated flow, which runs off what Power Automate call a trigger. So effectively, it's event-driven. There are instant flows. So an instant flow is effectively you click a button to trigger it, to force it to run. And then there are what's called scheduled flows. So with these flows, you can also set up a schedule, for example, for them to run every day, every week, even every hour if you wanted to. So flows all have actions, and we can also have conditions. So on my example on the slide, there's an initial trigger. In this case, if we've used with forms, a new response is submitted. We get those response details, and then there's an action to add those details into an Excel table. We've then got another action to go and list the rows that are in a table. So each of these steps is an action, but we can also have conditions. So for example, in these response details, we could say, if somebody has selected a certain response, we want Power Automate to go down a particular route. If they've selected another response, it goes down a different route. Power Automate uses something called connectors. So as I'd mentioned, it integrates with all of the Office applications. So it uses connectors to connect to Excel, to Outlook, to Teams, etc. You can troubleshoot your flows, you can test them before they go live, and there are a whole raft of pre-built templates. I know that one of the questions that came up was around how to best get started with Power Automate. So simplest answer is, I would say, when we go into it, is have a look at some of the templates and use those to automate something that's a fairly simple but sort of mundane task. Okay, what we're going to look at today is using Power Automate with Microsoft Forms. So why would you use it with Forms? So we can automate workflows. So we'll automate processes that are triggered when a form response is received, rather than us either having to switch on the send me an email when somebody submits a response, or just having to go in and monitor our form responses. Gives us more functionality. So as you'll see in a little while in the demo, Power Automate, we can incorporate other apps. So we can get it to send an email. As I've mentioned, we can use conditions. The overall thing is it improves efficiency and also accuracy. So it removes some of the human element of data input, etc. And we can also troubleshoot and test to make sure that any issues do get resolved. So what we're going to look at for one of these is creating an automated flow for managing responses. So in preparation, what we would need to do is we'll create our form using Microsoft Forms. We will need to create a spreadsheet using Excel. Alternatively, what you can do is create your form and you can use the Get Responses Excel file from Microsoft Forms. Alternatively, we would create an Excel document, set up our column headings. Really important point is The data in your Excel file must be formatted as a table. Your columns in the Excel spreadsheet need to match the questions in the form. You can have additional columns where you might want to put formulas in that further evaluate the response. The other important thing is for this, it needs to be saved somewhere in the cloud. So either in OneDrive or in SharePoint. So then we need to plan our steps. So what steps will be included in the flow? What other apps are we going to incorporate? So in this case, we're going to say a user completes a quiz in forms. This triggers the flow. Our results will then be copied into an Excel spreadsheet. We could have a thing of Excel then has an additional column formula that works out whether or not the person has passed or failed the quiz, and then creates a result. So if they've passed, it can generate a certificate, for example, from a document template, and it can be sent back to the user and your HR team. If they fail, it can send an email to them with a link to be able to retake it, and we could copy in HR. So this is certainly one that we use internally for our internal cybersecurity training. So users watch the video on our intranet, they complete a form, this then triggers a flow, writes the results to Excel. Formulas in the Excel file work out whether or not the person has passed, and if they've passed, it generates a certificate from a template, emails it to them, and a copy goes to HR. Okay. So in our first demo, we'll create a basic flow to manage our forms responses. We'll have a look at going back in and editing it so we can add additional steps and conditions. We can test it. And we'll also look at being able to share a flow with other people. An important point to note with when you create your flow is, if I just come out of my presentation, so I'm in Power Automate. The important thing to note is when you go into Power Automate, it uses your account. So the flow that you create will run in your account. It's an important point to note because if, for example, a colleague of yours creates a Power Automate flow, everything's working all hunky-dory, that person then leaves the organization. When their account is closed down, that flow will stop working. So it is one to bear in mind of the flow will run in your account, but you can share it with other people. So what we're going to do for our demo is I've got open a Microsoft form that is, it's a dummy form that just collates feedback for new starters on their first week at KISS. So there's a few questions: their name, the date, email address, the team they work in, how they rate the training, ranking their experiences, a few statements about their team, how likely are they to recommend KISS. So what we want to do is, when this form is completed, I want it to write it into a central spreadsheet, which, bear with me, if I go and grab it, I'll show you where I've put this. So it is in, let's just bring this over onto screen. So I've created an Excel spreadsheet called Feedback on Your First Week at KISS Results. I've just saved it into a folder called First Week Feedback, and I've saved it into my OneDrive. This could also be in a SharePoint folder. So if I wanted it to feed back into a central HR location, I could save it under a document library in a HR folder. So if I just open this up just so that you can see what's in it. So let's just close that. So my column headings, some of these are preset. So the ID of the form, the start time, completion time, but then we've got the name, the date, email address, the team, and then columns for the questions that are being asked in the form. So I'll just, actually, I'll close this for now, and I'll just minimize this. So what we want is, we want this form being completed to be the trigger for our flow. So if I go back to Power Automate, so as you can see, I've got a whole raft of Power Automate flows. Some are scheduled, some are automated. So what I'm going to do is create a new flow. So just simply new flow. Now, as I'd mentioned, with the getting started, so you can start from a template or you can build your own from a blank one. If I just go into template, just to give you an idea of what's in here. So for example, there are built-in flows for, say, for example, save an Outlook.com email attachments to OneDrive, save them from Outlook to Dropbox, notify an email when a new file is uploaded to OneDrive. I might want to save Office 365 email attachments to a specified OneDrive for Business folder. So as you can see, there are probably a couple of hundred different templates in here. So what I would say is, if you're just getting started, try out some of these templates, and once you've created it, you can then go back and look through the steps and start editing it. It gives you a nice starting point rather than jumping into a new blank flow and having to work out how to create it. So if I go back to create, so what I want is, as I'd mentioned, I want an automated flow that's going to be triggered by an event, which is somebody submitting that form. As I'd mentioned, there is an instant one that's triggered as and when I want it to run, or we can schedule it to say I want it to run at preset intervals. Something else that's new is describe it to design it. So with Copilot being built into 365 now, Copilot is also included within Power Automate. So you can use that. You can give Copilot a description of what you want your flow to do, and it will help you build it. So I'm going to create an automated cloud flow. So we need to give it a name, and I'm going to call this, oops. So I'm going to call it induction feedback, and then I'll choose my flows trigger, sorry. So as you can see, when a new response is submitted from Microsoft Forms, we've got things like if an item was created in SharePoint, when something's created or modified, and there's a whole raft of different triggers in here. But the one I want is a new form response is submitted. So I can create my flow. So when a new response is submitted, so if I click onto this initial step or the trigger, it will then ask me, which form do I want to use? So click into the drop down, it then gives me, these are all of the forms that I've currently got. And the one I want is, if I remember correctly, right at the bottom of the list, it is my first week at Quiss feedback. So select my form. This is as much as I need to do with this trigger. All I need to tell it is which form do I want it to monitor. The next step that I need to do is click onto the little plus, and I can add a new action. So when I go to add an action, this pane over on the right hand side opens up, and they're built into sort of categories, if you like. So for example, there's Microsoft Outlook, there's OneDrive for Business, Outlook.com, SharePoint. So in all of these, there are a whole raft of actions that we can use. And as you can see, there are hundreds and hundreds in here. Or we can search. So if I search for I just start typing get response, under Microsoft Forms, there is an action called get response details. And if I expand out, see more, it would show me further ones. So this is what I want. I want to get the form, get the response details. So when I select the get response details, it will then ask for the parameters. So it will ask me the form ID. So which form response details? So it's the same form, my first week at Quiss feedback. So although I'd set it on this first one, this is just the trigger to say when that form is submitted, this is what I want it to do. So I want it to get the response details. I then need to tell it the unique identifier for that response so that it can give me the individual responses that have come back, so it won't be triggered multiple times. So with this, we've got dynamic values, which is the little lightning bolt, or we can create a custom expression. But if I'm using the dynamic values, it then shows me I can pick things that have been pulled in from previous steps in my flow. So when a new response is submitted, the only thing in there is the response ID. So this is what I want. This gives me the ID of the response that's just been submitted. So I can now add another step. And what I want it to do is I want it to add a row into a table. So I just put in add a row. So we've got Excel Online Business. Now, the thing to watch with these is if it's your corporate account, always look for the one that is business. Otherwise, it's going to look for a personal copy of Excel. So in this case, I want it to add a row into a table. As you can see, there are also options. We can get it to update a row, delete a row, get a row, list the rows in a table. And this is all filtered just because I'd put in add a row. So I want it to add a row into a table. So the add a row into the table will then ask me, okay, where is this file? So if I click on my drop down, then it gives me, these are all the locations, cloud locations that I can go and look at. So all of my Teams locations or my SharePoint sites, and up at the top, I've got OneDrive for Business. So it will then ask me, which document library is it in? And OneDrive for Business only gives me the one, it's OneDrive. If it was a SharePoint site, I would just need to select the library. Then it will ask me which file I want it to update. So in my OneDrive, I've got my first week feedback, click the little arrow to expand it. And I want it to, this one, feedback on your first week at Quiss results. And then finally, it's going to ask me for the name of the table in that file. Click on the little drop down. And I've got a table in there that I named induction feedback. So other advanced parameters. So if I expand these out, what it now gives me is what date and time format am I using? I'm going to use the ISO. So it will then ask me, these are the columns. So ID, start time, completion time, email, name, date, email address, etc. So I go into these and then I can use the dynamic values from this get response details. So click the little arrow, and if I click to show 13 more, so I can then see all of the response details. So my ID is my response. Start time, completion time, I don't need to include. Name, I can go in and I can select it from my get response details. So I'll add in the name, I'll ignore date one, the date, just expand this out. Email address. Email will pick up the email address of the person submitting it if it's allowed in the form. So I've got my email address answer, my team, which is another answer. How did they rate their training? Rank the experiences. Just need to expand this out. Rate the following statements. My manager is approachable. So I'd simply go through my responses, getting the answers to the questions. My team made me feel welcome. And how likely would you be to recommend Quiss? There we go. Okay. There is a column in there to say, please upload a copy of your completed induction checklist. I haven't included that in the form, so I can ignore that one as well. So you don't have to complete all of these. All I've done is fill out the ones where there is an answer in my form. So this is now going to add a row into my table. So next thing I want to do is, as part of this flow, I'm going to send an email. I'll send it to myself with a notification to say somebody has filled out the form. So what I want to do in that email is I want to create a link to the form. So if I go in and add a new action, and I want to create a link. So I want to create a share link in OneDrive for Business. So if I create a share link, it will ask me, where's the file that I want to share? So if I open the folder from OneDrive, and it is in my first week feedback, and it's the feedback on the results. What type of link is it? So do I want to give them edit or just view? So in this case, I'm going to say, I just want to give them view. And the link scope. So if I set it as organization, effectively anybody in the organization, so put my teeth in and try again. Anybody in my organization can use that link. So I've created my sharing link. So the next thing I'm going to do is send the email. So I'll add another action, which is I'm going to send an email. So it's this Office 365 Outlook. I'm going to send an email. So as you can see, we can set it. I want to forward an email. I want to draft an email. I want to send an email from a shared mailbox even. So there's pretty much anything that you can do in Outlook you can use within here, but I want to send an email. So it will ask me, who is the email to? Now with this, I'm just going to hard code that it's going to me. Alternatively, you can use dynamic content. So for example, if there is an email address in your response details, you can use that. I'm going to specify a subject and I'll just call it induction feedback. And then in the body of the message, in here, I am going to use some of the dynamic content. So if I go into here, so as you can see in here, I've got my create share link. I've got my add a row into a table. I've got the get response. So as you can see, I can go back to any previous step in this flow. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to use the name from the get response details. Oops. So that the name of the person that submitted it has submitted feedback. What you could do in here is we could include the answers to all of the questions in the body of the email. In this case, I'm just going to put in that sharing link. So create a share link creates a web URL. I can even set sensitivity. And if I show other parameters, if I've got a shared mailbox, I can send it from, I can copy somebody else in, I can blind copy. I could even include attachments, reply to, and I can set the importance. So in this case, I'll leave it as normal. And then as a belt and braces approach to this, what I also want it to do is post a message into a Teams channel. So it's going to send an email with a link, but I also want it to post into Teams so other people will be aware. I add another action and I'm going to say I want it to post. So I want to post a message in a chat or channel. as you can see, you can post a feed notification, you can post a card in a chat or channel, adaptive cards. But what I want to post a message in a chat or channel. So what am I posting as? So do I want it to say Flowbot has posted this? And it will literally say Flowbot. Power Virtual Agent is brand new, it's still in preview. Or I can set it as the user, which would say James Smith has just posted this into this channel. So I'll set it as user so it shows who posted it. Then it will ask me, where do I want to post it into? So is it a channel or is it an existing group chat? So I'm going to post into a channel. It will then ask me which team is it the channel in, and it's in my Quiss demo team. So as you can see, it will show these are all of the different teams I'm currently a member of. So it's the Quiss demo team I want to use. What channel is it? It will now show me all of the different channels in that team, and I've got one called notifications, and I can add my message. And once again, I will use the name I'll say this person has submitted feedback. Oops, not in induction, on induction. And just like with the email, I'm also going to add that sharing link. So I will add the URL. Other options in here, I can add a subject onto this. So I'm going to say, I'll add a subject to it of induction feedback. Okay, so just to review my steps. So when the form is submitted, so your first week at Quiss feedback, that triggers my flow. It will then get the details that were submitted in the form, adds a row into the table, creates a sharing link to that file. It will then send an email, in this case to me, subject induction feedback, detail of this person has submitted feedback with a link to it. And then finally, as a belt and braces approach, it will also post a message into notifications. So I save this. And one of the nice things with Power Automate is it tells me my flow is ready to go. They recommend that I test it. If there was anything wrong with any of these actions, it would tell me that there's something wrong, and it would tell me which one I need to go back and review. So it's not a case of you find out when it runs or doesn't run. When you save it, it will tell you if there's anything wrong. So if I go to my form and I'll collect responses, just shorten that URL and copy the link. And create my form. So I can submit my feedback. So it's James Smith. I'll put today's date, my email address, which department or which team I'm in. So how would I'll say meeting my manager, meeting the team, the induction training. I'll say yes, they're approachable and made me feel welcome. And I'm quite likely to recommend them, and I can submit it. So now if I go back to my flow, and if I just go back, I can then see my flow. And from my flows, if I go all the way back, I'll just go back to the list. If I just click onto it, it shows me my 28-day run history, and it tells me 20 seconds ago, my flow ran and it succeeded. So if I just jump over to Outlook, my induction feedback email. So James Smith has submitted feedback. Here's a link to the Excel file. I also go over to Teams. Here's my message posted. So the subject, James Smith has submitted it, feedback on induction. There's my link to it. So it sent me the email and it's posted into Teams. And if I open up the spreadsheet, and it's added my line in. It's come in here just simply because it's number 3, just because I ran this earlier just to double check that it was going to work. So that's the reason that it's response number 3. And there's a couple of blanks in there because there were some in there previously. But as you can see, it's automated the whole process. I didn't need to do anything. Once that form had been submitted, it ran it all automatically for me. So back into my flow. So if I wanted to make some changes to it, I can see that it ran and it succeeded. But up at the top, I can go back in and I can edit it. So when I go to edit it, I can then click onto any of these actions and I can amend them. If I wanted to remove one, for example, if I decided actually I don't want it to send an email, I just want it to post a message. If I select send an email, if I just right click it, I can delete it. Also, if I wanted to swap the order around and say actually send the email after you've posted into Teams, I can click and drag it and change the order around. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to add in a condition, because what I'm going to say is specifically, if the person filling out the form, if they work in the finance team, I want it to add a row into a different table. So the form will trigger the flow. I'll get the response details. What I then want to do is I want to add a new action here. And what I'm going to add is a condition. So it comes under control and it gives me this condition. So my condition will evaluate to true or false. So in my choose a value, what I want to check is your team, is it equal to, and as you can see, there's a whole raft of these conditions that you can use. A fairly simple one. So I'm going to say, is the team equal to finance? If it is, I want it to follow these steps. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these rather than recreate them. So I'll copy them and I can adjust them. So if I right click, I can copy an action. If I click onto the little action under true, I can paste an action. It adds a row into a table. Now, you can rename these. So this has just added it, add a row into a table 1. Up here on the left, I could say is add a row into a table finance. Because what I want to change is which file it's going to write to. So it is in first week feedback, but I've got a finance folder and I've got a feedback form in there. My table is induction feedback. I then just need to quickly drop my details in. It's the ID. Actually, fill in the name, the date, email address. I won't fill all of these in because as you can see exactly how it's responder's email and your team, just so we can double check your team. I'll just put the first answer in. Okay. I can then move my standard one into false. I can copy, create a share link. I can paste the action into here. I won't rename this. All I need to do is change what I'm creating a link to. So again, it's first week feedback. it's my finance folder this time, and it's that file. I can move my share link. Again, I can copy my email because I'll need to adjust. Oops. Here's my action, because what I need to adjust with this is this web URL. The name is absolutely fine, but what I need to change is my create share link 1. So it adds the link to the correct place. I can move my send email into here. My post a message in chat or channel is absolutely fine because I don't need it to write to a specific route. So what it will now do is the form is submitted, gets the response details, checks whether or not the team that's been submitted is finance. If it is, it adds it into the table in the finance folder, creates the link to that specific file, sends the email, posts into Teams. If they select anything other than finance, it adds a row into the standard table, creates the link, sends the email, posts into Teams. So if I save this, okay, now because this flow has already run, if I want to just test that it does still work, if I go into test, so manually I would go and fill in the form. If I go to automatically, I can use a recently used trigger. Because the flow's already run, I can tell it, I want to test it with this one that ran 7 minutes ago. And in testing, you see in real time which actions have run successfully. So the form was submitted, it got the details, it checked the condition. If you notice down the true side, it says it skipped it. The reason being because my response was the team was IT, so it ran down the false side. It sent me another email. So it's duplicated that. It's posted into induction feedback. So with this, and you can have multiple conditions. So we could test more things than this. Okay. So we've added our condition. Another type of flow that you may well find useful is to be able to filter information that's been submitted. So if I go back to my flows, and it was one of the questions of how can I query Excel information based on variables that are submitted. So with this, I'm going to create an instant flow just so that I can quickly run it. And I'll just call this Excel demo. And I'm going to manually trigger it. So with my manually trigger flow, and I'm going to add an input. So my input, I can choose, is it text, is it yes or no, is it a file, an email, a number, or a date? In this case, it's text, and the one I want is department, and my next one is status. Okay, so I've got an Excel spreadsheet with different departments, different status. So what I want it to do is I want it to list the rows present in a table. And my file is in OneDrive, the library. Again, this could be a SharePoint location. I just put them in OneDrive so it's easy to access. So which file is it? It's in my demo files. And it's my Power Automate demo. Again, it would need to be formatted as a table. And I've got a table called orders. We can have things like sensitivity labels. In my filter query, so here on my first step, I've got the input. So I can filter this to say, so I see 16 more, I've got my input. So I'm going to say department and expand these out, status. The other option for this is you could use a Microsoft form to get these. So people can choose as many or as few different options as they want to create your query. So I've got my trigger that I'll run automatically. Go and get the rows from a table based on what I enter as the department and the status. Now I will quickly just go back and open my demo files, my Power Automate demo. I'll just quickly open this file. So just so you can see what's in here, whole range of order references, departments, order totals, etc., and some different statuses. So I'm going to say I want anything that was for IT that is pending approval. So let me close this, just minimize this again. So now from this, I've got a couple of different options. The output of this, I could say, I want to drop it into the body of an email, or I want to post it into Teams. For this one, what I'm going to do is to say, I want it to create me a new file with those details. So first thing I want it to do is I'm going to ask it to create a CSV table. So I want it's a data operation. I want to create a CSV table. As you can see, there are also Excel ones. I could create a worksheet, for example. But for this, I'm going to create a CSV table. Where is it getting its information from? It's from the body of my previous step. List those rows present in that table because I've got those filters. What columns do I want? I could give them custom columns. I'm going to go with automatic columns. So this will create me my table. From this, I can then actually create a file. So I'll add another action and oops, I want to create a file. So OneDrive for Business, I want to create a file. Where do I want to create it? It's in root. It's in demo files. My file name, I'm just going to call this, oops. Output from query. What is the content of the file? And it is my output from my create CSV table. So it's manually triggered, so it will run as and when I want it to. It prompts me for the department and the status. It then goes and grabs anything from that table that matches my my variables, creates a temporary CSV table, and then it will create a file from that information. If I save this, again, tells me it's ready to go. It's recommended that I test it. So if I just go back, and from here, I can run my flow. So it tells me it's going to sign in to Excel Online, OneDrive for Business, and it's going to use my connection. So I can continue on this. So my department is IT, status, I'm going to say actually invoiced because I think that might create a few more, and then run my flow. So instantly tells me it's running. If I just refresh this, it now tells me that it's failed. So if I go in to look at this, it will give me detail of what is wrong with this. So listing equals contains starts with or ends with. So tells me my filter query within here is wrong. So if I go in and edit this, so my list row is present in a table. So if I remove one of these just for checking, save it. I can run my test automatically with my previously run trigger. I can run my test. And again, it's fallen over again at this point. Now, I've just spotted the time, so I won't keep looping back through the editing of this. But as you can see, this is the beauty of it, that we can run tests, we can come in, I can go back in and edit it, and I can go to my step and I can go and adjust the filter query or whichever step it is that it's falling over on. Okay. The last thing that I just need to share with you, if I go back to my flows, yes, that'll be okay, is, as I'd mentioned right at the beginning, when you create your flows, they run using your account. However, what you may want to do is share that flow with other people. So if I use my induction feedback, tells me currently it's switched on. So if you wanted to temporarily pause this, you can turn it off and turn it back on again. But if you want to share it with somebody else, you've got two options. You can send a copy of it. So sending a copy will ask me, who do I want to share it with? This will give them their own independent copy of the flow. Alternatively, get rid of these flows, I can share it with somebody. So if I go to share, what this will do is I can add them as a co-owner. So effectively, they then become the co-owner of this. They can view it, they can edit it. If they did edit this, it will tell me that they've edited it. Currently, it tells me these are the connections that are in use. So all of these are using my account. So what I will do is, so Sabrina Griffin is a member of my team. So it prompts me before, make sure you're sharing permission to use the connection. So I'm saying Sabrina can use these connections. Sabrina will receive an email notification to say, I have just shared this flow with her. Sabrina is now a co-owner. So if I go back to my induction feedback and it shows me Sabrina is a co-owner of this flow. So Sabrina will be able to go in and look at it. She'll see the run history. She'd be able to edit it. But as I say, if Sabrina did make any changes to it, I would be notified to say Sabrina has made changes to this particular flow. So if I go back to flows now, with flows, if you notice, I'm now under shared with me. If I go to my cloud flows, I've only got my Excel demo. The reason is, once you share a flow with somebody, it will be stored under shared with me because it becomes a shared flow. As you can see, there are a whole load of flows that we use internally at Quiss. So these are all flows that other people have made, but they've shared them with me. Okay. Couple of questions that came up. So how you can extract stats and data from a spreadsheet based on variables. You would use something very similar to, I go to my cloud flows, that Excel demo. So as I'd mentioned, I used a manual input of enter the department, enter the status. You could use a Microsoft form to get those those details in, and then use that form submission as the trigger for it. What's the best way to get started using Power Automate? As I'd mentioned, it is probably try out using some of these templates first, because it will give you, if I use this one as an example, notify an email when a file is uploaded to OneDrive. And it's as simple as continue. And it builds me my flow. I then just go in and fill in the parameters. But yeah, I would say pick a sort of a fairly simple but mundane task. Chances are Microsoft have already built a template for it, and you can use those to get started. Somebody had asked whether Power Automate can trigger Legora prompts and feedback the outputs into the emails. At the moment, there is no out-of-the-box connector or integration for Legora built into Power Automate. It might be possible if Legora offers some sort of API, but at the moment there isn't a built-in connector for it. Let's have a look. Somebody else had asked whether there's any additional training for most general use cases. Can there be additional hands-on training in addition to the introduction? There can. I'm more than happy for to drop my email address so you can contact me and we can have a discussion about this. Somebody else had asked, have some firms shared licenses around different departments to encourage more innovation and transformation? So this simple answer is you shouldn't need to. If you've got Microsoft 365 Business Standard, Business Premium, E3 or E5 licenses, Power Automate should be included with them. The area where you would need to purchase a specific Power Automate license is if you wanted to use what they call premium connectors. So if I just go into my demo, I'll just quickly edit this and I'll add a step. What you will find is some of these will have this little diamond marker. Any of these actions that you see with the little diamond marker are premium actions. You would need a specific Power Automate license to be able to use those. Another question was, is there a way to import information without manual input? Yes, as you've seen, if I go back to my flows, the vast majority of flows use an automatic trigger rather than somebody having to do something. An event, a file's been added to SharePoint, a file's been changed, somebody submitted a form. All of these can trigger flows. So yeah, somebody had asked how to automate data flows using Power Automate. Again, if you use a trigger, flows can trigger other flows. So again, something like a form being submitted, somebody updating a file can trigger a flow that can then get Power Automate to write further information into other areas, send emails, etc.